Hey everybody, this is Linda Misegadis, and you're listening to An Unconventional Guide to Success, the show that talks about real life with real people for those of you who are interested in learning from others the steps they took on their journey towards success as defined by them.
Welcome to An Unconventional Guide to Success. My name is Scott Montgomery, and my co-host Linda Misegadis is with us as well.
Hey everyone.
Hello, Linda.
Good to see you today, Scott. Nice to have Ron in the studio with us.
Good to see you as well.
Hello, everyone.
I'm super excited. Today we have Ron Cooke, one of our revered guests, to talk a little bit about his experience, and I'll just dive right into his bio.
Yeah, jump in there, Scott. I can't wait. I'm excited for this one. You've been talking about Ron for a while, so.
Ron's a great guy. Thank you for joining us, Ron. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Ron Cooke is a tech sales professional who was born and raised in Reston, Virginia. Currently, he is the managing director of the public sector practice at Montgomery. They are a sales consulting firm that specializes in generating top-of-the-funnel leads for technology companies. He has been with Montgomery for 5 years now. Before making his way into tech sales, Ron held multiple positions in the fitness industry. He was a personal trainer, fitness manager, and general manager across 3 different well-known facilities. After graduating from Herndon High School, Ron attended Old Dominion University, where he obtained his bachelor's degree in psychology. After college, Ron was a bit, maybe slightly very lost, according to his terms. As he navigated the professional world, it became a true challenge for him. Discouraged by multiple corporate entry-level job rejections, Ron leveraged his love for fitness, sports, and people to break into the fitness industry. However, at age 25, Ron decided fitness was no longer the industry that would allow him to live the life he wanted. With little to no relevant experience in what he called hard skills, and in the industry, an industry switch seemed like an uphill battle. Luckily, Ron is the proud owner of an open mind. Glad to hear that, Ron. You're open-minded.
Yes.
Curious spirit, and has few key interpersonal I could trip this up, interpersonal skills that allowed the right people into his life at the perfect time. When he stopped asking himself, what are my skills, and began asking, where can this relationship take me, things began to unfold for Ron in the very best possible way. In his spare time, Ron enjoys working out, learning about new and innovative technologies, and teaching himself new skills. Some current hobbies of Ron's include cooking, cheap watch collecting, and wine tasting. Welcome to the show, Ron. Sorry, I tripped up a few of the sentences. I'm not a good reader.
No, it's fine. I was like helping like myself like delete it and do the whole like, what do you call it? Autocorrect, those kinds of things. So
Yeah.
I was tripping up writing it. So don't worry.
No,
it's hard to write about yourself, right?
It is.
It's hard to like trying to encapsulate about that. It's hard to do that. Not every, that's challenging to write your bio.
It was funny. It was funny when I was doing the audiobook, I was actually reading words that weren't on the page in order to read the audiobook. And I'm like, wait a minute, why did I just say these words? They're not even in front of me.
Now's not a good time to rewrite the book, Scott.
God, don't even go there. Don't even go there. Well, one of the reasons I wanted Ron on the show today, and part of my bio for Ron, is I have found great delight, joy, and passion in watching his growth these past 5 years. Ron was an integral part of one of the chapters of the book that talked a little bit about coaching, resilience, and leadership. And I am so fortunate that every year Ron sends me a text around where he's at in his career on the anniversary of wherever it is he is, based on some conversations we had many years ago, and based on a few of the changes that I was able to offer advice that helped him move his career forward. So I'm super excited you're here, and there's a connection in that is why you're a guest today. And so with that, I thought we would just start diving into some questions that might relate to, Ron and what's going on with Ron.
Absolutely.
So one of the first questions I have here is, what did you want to be growing up, and how has that changed to who you are today?
Wait a minute, Scott.
No,
I'm
I
sorry.
don't want
That
to
is
do
not
it.
the
I
first
don't want
question
to.
that we have. We have an icebreaker, Ron, so
All
we
right.
can get
Okay.
you relaxed. Okay, this is why.
I'll
This
do
is
whatever.
why I don't let Scott do the leading. So he just changes my script all up. So
You guys got a
no,
script?
of course we have a script.
An
You
outline.
think this show is like free fall?
Okay.
No, listen, Scott was going to try to bypass this, but he doesn't get to. So we like to start out with an icebreaker of, if you could hang out with any cartoon character, who would you choose and why would you choose that?
Any cartoon character? Who is? It's either Tom or Jerry. Who's always going after?
The cat
It's
is.
always
I think the cat
Tom
is
is
Tom.
always after Jerry.
Tom is
Yep,
always
yep.
after Jerry. Yeah, I want to hang out with Jerry.
Yeah.
That guy knows how to figure stuff out.
I like that. That's a
You
good
talk
one.
about perseverance and resiliency. That mouse, he's still alive.
Yes.
That cat's been hunting him for 100 years. So I would definitely want to hang out with Jerry.
I like that. That's a good
answer.
one. My dad used to love watching Tom and Jerry. Never understood it, but that was his cartoon, was Tom and Jerry. So that's
that
great.
actually
That's
makes
a good
sense.
one, and I like the reason.
Yeah, knowing Ron, that makes sense. There's resiliency. There's the feeling of underdog.
Sticky situations.
No, that's totally a good one. I like that for sure. All right, Scott, go ahead. Now you can ask the serious questions.
All right. Well, actually, Linda, I think in the past you've also said what you would like and who you would want to hang out with.
Well, I have, yeah. And I do, I kind of have this mischievous side to me. I've always been that person who always does what they're supposed to do and do the right thing type of thing. And so my favorite character to hang out with would be Deadpool, because even though he's considered a superhero,
yep.
but how he does it and what he does is clearly not following the right way of doing things. But what I like about him is he is completely authentic to who he is. Like, he doesn't pull any punches. He is who he is. And I like that about him, because it kind of has that reflection on self. So
I have to agree. He's a results guy. He's not a process guy.
He is. And he's not if you don't like his method, then don't hang out with him. He's completely okay with that.
Yeah, he speaks what's on his mind.
You got to appreciate that. Says what's on his mind.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, no. So I think that's one of my favorites. But all right, Scott, I'm going to ask you yours anyway. I know it's going to be.
You do, and it's funny. Ron should say,
may not.
And Ron should say, comfortable in his own skin is actually pretty funny. Because
yes, right?
Because, yeah, my guy is the Incredible Hulk.
Ironic.
Very ironic.
Yeah. I want to hear this one. Why?
Well, I love the science behind his cool and calm demeanor and the way he kind of approaches things, until he has to come in hot to get it done. And that change and that conversion of the power of just, turning into the Hulk is just fascinating to me, and definitely correlates with my style often. Come in hot and get things done.
You know what I like about that, Scott? I've been thinking about this a little bit with the fact that that's, that the Hulk is the guy. Hulk also doesn't like when he turns into the Hulk, right? Like it's not really like that's not his comfort. And that's not your comfort either. Like, I watch you get very uncomfortable when it does turn into, like, all of a sudden you've at that place where you've escalated now, and that's not your comfort area. Your comfort area is right here. It's like, and I think that when you think about the personality differences, that actually, the more you've talked about that, and I've kind of just reflected on it, the more it makes more and more sense every time. So,
I like that one. That is true. That is true, actually. As much as I come in hot, I try not to, right?
Yeah, and you don't like it either.
No.
Like, you're not comfortable in that area. That's not your area. Hulk smash is not your favorite place to be. So.
A different chemistry. It's a whole different. I'm uncomfortable in that skin, but I get that skin.
Yes.
I think the point is, though, is that he can if he has to.
Yes.
Exactly.
That's right.
Yes. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. No, it's very true.
What a good icebreaker, Linda. I'm so glad you went back and made us do that. Thank you for that.
I know you can't skip the icebreaker. You got to do the icebreaker.
That's right. But I thought it was I just love to dive right in with Ron. When I
I
see
know you do.
Ron at the gym, it'll be literally like, "Hey, how are you? And tell me what's going on with your life." We go right in, don't we, Ron?
Yeah, like mid set, and I know what to do. I know the drill. I'm taking out the earbuds. All right, yeah,
Yeah,
here we
that's
go.
right.
No, next time, Ron, you have an icebreaker, and next time you stop him and you say, "No, we're going to do an icebreaker first," and
Reel him back
you
in.
reel him back in,
Yep.
so that way he just doesn't come in hot. So.
Totally doable.
Ron's just going to go the other way. He's just going to say,
right.
"Oh, I see Scott. I'm going that way."
That's right, exactly. Oh, too funny.
But I did.
All right, Scott.
I did want to get to this, Ron. I'm very curious. What did you want to be growing up, and how has that changed from who you are today? Is such a good question for you. Yeah.
Hmm. I love that question. I'm still like trying to figure out what I want to be when I do grow up. So I think when I was, a child and, adolescent, um, and I am kicking myself still at 30 thinking about this. I never really had something that I was like, I want to be that. And I was very much, I wanted to be an NFL player, want to be an astronaut, space cowboy. Nothing really oh, I want to be like an engineer or
Yeah.
it's funny I brought that up because in my 6th grade picture in my yearbook it says NBA I say that was the question, when I grow up I want to be in the NBA or an engineer. Because I think
Oh,
my dad said
interesting.
like put engineer or something. Because I had no idea. And
That's great.
it's a good question for me because I think I didn't think about it as much as maybe other kids did, or maybe that I
Mm,
should have. But then again, I'm not too mad at it because I'm finding that my success is a bit unconventional, as you might call it, and it
yeah,
was never a plotted linear line. So, and I'm enjoying that ride.
that's
That's
good. I love
fantastic.
that.
Yes.
Yeah, well, and you know what? Maybe that's part of the problem is we put too much pressure on kids to figure out what do you want to be when you grow up? How do you know what you want to be? And to your point too, when are you grown up? At what point do you say, "Okay, I guess I have to stop learning. I have to this is now the course that's been charted for me that I have to take." And so I think that it's great. Kids should think about, I want to be an NBA player, an NFL player, an astronaut, a truck driver, whatever they want to be. They should be all of those things. And then take that journey through life to kind of figure out what their path is, because who the heck knows what you want to be? I
Yeah,
don't think there are very few people who I think said, "I want to be a doctor,"
Yeah.
and that's the course they charted and they took every step. I think those are those few individuals out there. The rest of us are all floundering around. We have no idea what it is we really want to be when we grow up.
right.
So
We'll get there.
yeah,
Well, I
we
think.
will. I
Well, and I
like
think that's
it.
the
We're on our
thing.
way.
And Ron brought that up. He maybe wasn't as pointed and just answer the question. What I'm finding is that unconventional in this inquiry of having written the book and the podcast and talking to people and paying attention to this, unconventional seems to be more conventional, truthfully.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
unconventional path for those who are linear and going to be doctors and going to wake up one day and be an engineer or an NBA player or
Yeah.
inherently something they were put on this earth to do is actually the unconventional path.
Yeah.
And
That's a good point.
it's really interesting to unpack that, which is part of why we're doing what we're doing, right? To learn about.
Because we minimize that, right,
Yes.
Scott? I mean, we minimize the idea that we think that conventional is the norm and unconventional isn't. And I think what you've really kind of tried to unpack through all of this is that just what you said there. Unconventional is probably far more normal than the conventional path that most people took. How many of us really set out to end up where we are right now? Probably most of us didn't. So.
It's the less celebrated too.
Very
100%.
much the less celebrated,
Yeah, there's
yes.
not as many accolades on the unconventional path, and there's not as much stuff to, I would say, write your story on a resume. It's has to be more lived and experienced. So
Yeah.
I think, yeah, it's more common that it's unconventional by our terms, but I think what we live in a world where we shine a light on the, you know, graduated Harvard, top Harvard Law, top of the class, went to the
Yeah.
most prestigious law firm, is now a managing partner at the law firm. Like, we celebrate those things, and it's,
Yeah.
not that it shouldn't be celebrated, but we don't say asterisk, this is highly abnormal.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a really good way to put that. Yeah. I totally agree.
And the perseverance and work of that, while incredible, so is that of being nimble and finding your way. And
Yeah.
for me as a creative, as more of a creative personality, I just love to explore what the next chapter is going to be. And I've been fortunate to find success in that exploration. And I think
Yeah.
that is an unconventional mindset for most. They've got
I
to put
agree.
so that's where the word unconventional is really, for me, locked in on this notion of, 9 to 5, raise your kids, be with your grandkids, die. And really, I would love to be
Yeah.
an astronaut at 60. Maybe it's time
Right?
for me to dust off my basketball and become that NBA player. I am 6 feet,
Yeah.
so it is
Yeah.
possible.
That you are. I can attest.
I'm also way too overweight, but I could do it. I could get there.
Nothing's stopping you.
Nothing's stopping me, so that's
that's right.
but it's nice
No.
to tickle on that notion a little bit too. And as far as that goes, Ron, and as relationships and partnerships are clearly important to your line of work and what you're doing now at Memory Blue. How do you define the two, and what role do they play in your day to day? Partnerships
The
and
two.
relationships. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Partnerships and relationships. So, partnerships, I would say, I would say that the delineation between the two is the foundation. So, for example, a partnership, for me, is this: the foundation of this is rooted in business and rooted towards an objective cause. And a relationship or friendship, if you will, might be formed along the way, but it's not necessary for it to be successful within the scope of a partnership. Now, a relationship to me is, it can have that partnership aspect, but there are some elements that have to be there as well for me for it to be a relationship. And that is, you know, hey, how are you doing? Are you, how are you feeling? Having those conversations that have nothing to do with and those are the primary conversations. So if I take a step back, and flip it around, a business partnership may form out of that, but it is not the basis of a relationship where it's two individuals or two groups that that understand each other and value each other's presence in any capacity, regardless of any monetary or objective acute gain per se. It is simply a social contract that both parties go into without the expectation of return in the end. So I'm lucky enough to have had experience both in my outside life, my work life, um, and I'm really grateful for that. So I don't know if that was too wordy of an explanation. I
No,
try to
no,
get
no.
things right, but
Well, how do they
No,
play?
don't try and get it right. Just say what you think.
No, this is great, and
yeah,
I really liked the
Yeah.
notion. If I may just extend on that, Linda, just for a second.
Yeah.
The way I define partnerships and relationships is very much on point. And the other reason I wanted to clarify something is, for example, my wife and I started in relationship. I cared
hmm
more about her and how she's doing and what she's going. And then we've moved it to business partnership and relationship. So at work, what are we doing to move the ball forward? And at home, how do you feel about it? Is an interesting dichotomy between my wife and I at work and at home. And we started the business after we had the relationship. The interesting thing about Linda and I is that we started in partnership. We started in a place of how can we move the ball forward in business, and now I actually care. How are you, Linda, as a friend? How do you feel? What's going on? And we married that from a different perspective. And so business relationships and partnerships for me are interchanged, and they have different levels of importance on and involvement on both. So Caitlin and I are clearly in a different relationship as parents and husband and wife than Linda and I as friends. But the how do you feel came about in two different ways, and both in partnership and business as well. So what
Yeah.
you describe is actually really well, I think, and what you've talked about
Yeah.
in those
Yeah. I
two
agree.
variations. How does it play a day to day for you though? Like where in there is there any kind of mapping for you in your relationships and partner in business and partnerships or?
I think so. I will ask certain sets of questions or be overly curious about certain things, depending on if I myself deem it a partnership or a relationship. Um, I'm, uh, I like to think I'm all about genuine interaction. So if that means if I see this as a partnership, you're going to know. And maybe I could be a little softer. Maybe I could be a little more like, hey, like, how's vacation? All right, anyway, let's get into it.
Hmm.
Um, but it's that ability to at least try to, spark the rock for a relationship that helps a partnership move forward in my eyes. And then on the relationship side of it, I honestly try to wall off or completely not block, but I make it well known, like, hey, I'm speaking to you as the other half of this relationship.
Hmm.
And there have been many times in my role, like currently, where I've had to shut one side or the other off to just be
Hmm.
a human. And that served me very well. That served me as well. So um, I think I will act and behave and speak in a certain way depending on who I'm talking to, whether it be a relationship or someone I'm in a relationship or a partner.
Hmm.
Um, but there's always a possibility that I'll sprinkle in a little bit of the other one too.
Hmm.
Yeah. No, I like that. Well, and I would imagine that given the path that you have taken, that that's somehow integral in your life, this whole relationship partnership. So to choose personal fitness, to go into, even to be an athlete, and then now what you're doing, even on this technology side of the house, all of those are very relationship driven roles. Like you have to be good at developing partnership relationships to really kind of excel in those areas. So when you think about that, like what formed that for you? Like why, was that important in growing up? Like what kind of set that path for you to seek that out?
So I'm understands to seek out relationships and
Yeah, like you chose
mm,
these careers that were they chose you that are very focused in on this relationship partnership type of model. So, like, what was it that made you, think, gosh, this is important to me. This is the path I want to go. Because you could have taken a different path, right, and gone to something that was more didn't require as much on the relationship partnership side. That was more, individual. But you didn't because every job that you've had based off of your bio is all focused in around the human connection.
absolutely. I think I mentioned it a little bit in my bio. I quickly recognize a lack of what I call hard skills. And I didn't learn what soft skills were
Yeah.
really until I met Scott. And
Interesting.
it's weird looking back. I don't know if I learned it, but I definitely was thrown into the game when in terms of relationships and partnerships when I met Scott, because Scott, it started as kind of both. And I remember I look back, I think back 5 years, and I was very much end game focused.
Mm.
So what I mean by that is I was always thinking, what can I gain for myself from this relationship? And I think that mindset
Okay.
itself,
Yeah.
it's an oxymoron. Now it's not a relationship.
Yeah.
It's disingenuine. And I met Scott, and at first I was like, what am I doing here? I love talking to this guy,
Yeah.
and I like the questions he asks me, and I like how he makes me think. And what I came to realize was uh, not Scott. There's a lot of people out there, but not many
Yeah.
like like Scott. He's kind of
Yeah.
one of his
He is
one
kind
of
of a one
one.
of kind. Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
and but to wrap that thought up, he kind of taught me there there's a lot that can be gained from having a conversation with someone without thinking you're getting something from it. And
Yeah.
I started practicing that, and I realized this is easy. I can do this. I
So
can talk
easy.
to
Yeah.
people.
Yes.
And when Scott came and I started to like our Scott and I's relationship began to crescendo, if you will, I started to
Yeah.
realize, oh, if I'm now I'm starting to get stuff from this. I'm starting to learn things. It's
Yeah.
starting to be
Yeah.
tangible. I
Yep.
didn't know that was possible. I thought it was all transactional. I didn't
Yeah.
understand that it was okay, you can form a relationship that turns into an opportunity
Right.
and maintain the relationship at the same time. So to answer your question, I think once I realized that I had an ability to connect with people, and that took such minimal effort. The profit margins on being able to connect with people are massive,
Huge.
Yes, they are.
100%.
I mean,
Yeah.
music
Yep.
to
So I just did that a lot.
music to any of our
Yeah.
listeners' ears. Say that again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll say it again. The profit margin on the ability to connect with people, sky high, 100%. Costs you
Love it.
nothing, but could mean the world to you. Who knows, if I didn't stop and have that conversation, that first one was Scott. Maybe I'm
Yeah.
still a personal trainer. I don't know. Butterfly effect, but
Right.
it's
Yeah.
it's something to mull over.
And
No,
one of the
I
things
love
that I
it.
would just caveat that comes up for me when you talk about that is I remember our first conversation, and you started it. You said, "Hey, I see you in here often. You know, I'm a personal trainer. Maybe there's opportunity. You know, I do this and that other thing for the living." And I was so enchanted by your approach, other than that of other personal trainers, that I knew for a hot second there was no way I was hiring you as a personal trainer, but I wanted to unpack you more. I wanted to hear a
Yep.
little bit more about what you had to say, and I was enchanted. It's truly the word. And then as we got to talking, one of the other things you said to me that was fascinating, and you, in your mindset, you were locked and loaded that you were not of any value past the function you were performing at the gym.
Yep.
And that function was what your friends put you in the box of. And I remember you saying no one's ever, I forget the exact words, but and you can validate this or confirm it or deny it, but no one ever really took the time to tell me I was something better than this. No one ever really took the
Mm-hmm.
time to introduce concepts. And these things were just like opening the door for us to have become friends and unpack
That's
all
Yeah.
awesome.
this. And the thing that I
Right.
love about Ron is that he took it and he ran with it. And now he's 5 times his salary. He's got more than I have in connections.
Yeah.
He's got his act together, and the world is his. Unlike that
Yeah.
mindset of sort of being locked and loaded into a function of, do I get it? Am I going to make $50 an hour off this guy at the gym because I see him a lot and he could really use some help with his training because he's a fat slob
Yeah.
and I see him in here trying all the time.
Yeah. That's how we describe you often. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just of late. That's how that goes. But also
And
55. I don't care.
you know, the one thing I'll say about that too is, and this is a really quick thought, you know, one thing that I will be forever grateful that you did for me, Scott, was I think you understood I was affected a lot by and needed a lot of external validation. Instead of giving me that, our conversations kind of taught me how to give myself internal validation, which was brand new to me.
Yeah.
I love
And
that.
that is kind of what set me off on this path that I'm on now. So formally, thank you. I think I've said it a
Well, oh
million
my
times
God.
now, but
No.
that's kind of the encapsulation of the value I got, which is, could be infinite, you know.
Yeah.
So and, and,
I
and
like
thank you for
that.
that. And you never need to thank me again because you've given me a front door seat to that. And the love affair I have with Ron on this subject is just infinite and
Yeah.
powerful. And that's why I quoted you in the book, because for our listeners and for paying it forward, what you're talking about is what the next generation of leaders needs to put
Yep.
into their equation more
Yes.
than anyone will ever recognize or tell you. These are not what you called soft skills, Ron, and I'm adamant about this. These are
I
called
agree.
leadership skills. And
Yeah.
being
I totally agree.
self-aware and having the confidence and reaching out to someone and taking of that what they can give or offer you, and you in return offering and giving what you can, is the start of something big. And
Hmm.
communicating effectively goals and habits doing where your lane makes you feel good is so much of what's lacking in business today, especially in a world where people think they have to deliver a skill or get their doctorate or become a medical doctor
Mm-hmm.
to get the accolades of being successful. And
Mm-hmm.
quite frankly,
Yeah.
you, for me, just define success. And that is so important for the next generation. So thank you for being here and continuing to share that story and allowing me to put it in a book that is in perpetuity. But
Yeah.
this is this is really why I wanted you here, because you open that up really fast. And I look how excited I get. I don't know how to, and it's not about your thanking me at all. It's about that light. It was so awesome to see you realize your own value when someone actually started paying attention to something and opening the door to other than your task that day. You're
Mm-hmm.
Right.
human, you're
Yeah.
human, and people need to bring that to the table. Vulnerability and susceptibility is a leadership skill. And I just wanted to highlight that. I get excited.
No,
I'm glad you're
I
here
think
for
those are
that
really good
message,
points.
because
Yeah.
you're really one of my favorite stories. As I ventured into this, Ron and I met at about the time I got certified as a leadership coach.
Oh, okay.
So I
Oh
was
yeah,
Right.
I
that's true.
was I was dancing in the skill of coaching leaders and finding
Yeah.
success in my own business. And also I liked Ron. So how do we make a friendship out of that? And what's that going to look like?
Yeah.
And we
No,
managed
I
to
like
figure
it.
it all out. It's fascinating to me. I love it.
Oh, it's really good. Well,
It's
it
been a
speaks to
ride.
all of the,
Yeah.
well, and it speaks to the things that you've really kind of been highlighting, right, Scott, throughout this journey is around coaching, mentoring, relationship, partnership, and also, smattered in on all of that is also self care, because you made the connection at the gym,
Right.
which is your, that's your safe space
Yes.
of trying to kind of come
Bring
back
it
and
back.
reset and
Yes.
center and find all of that. So it's interesting how all of those things together kind of intersected to help create this opportunity relationship that that the two of you have delivered or developed. And now thinking about how you're trying to take that out and teach others to really kind of incorporate that into their their day-to-day interactions, because I think what you said, Ron, was very powerful in that looking at making those connections only with the intention of what do I get out of this,
Yeah.
versus making those connections with no
Where will this take me?
intention of getting anything out of it. And how much more you've gotten in return, and I've always been a big believer of that. If you put good into the universe gives good back. So.
Well, and I think for me, one of the reasons I wanted to write the book is I, like Ron, had no direction. I also had dysfunction. I also had
Yeah.
insecurity. I also started in debt. So I had all the,
Yeah.
how did you possibly get out of this mess? And it is
Yeah.
100% because I was open and susceptible and vulnerable and executed on valuable relationships. So,
Yeah.
and I
Yep.
also hired a coach, and they helped me walk through this. So I paid to play, and I brought all these things to the table. And Ron really encompasses all of that. And I really, for himself, he really did. I was just a component of that allowed him to take
Yeah.
it and run with it. Right?
No,
I
it's
mean,
awesome.
yeah.
I completely, yeah, that, and I don't even know what was happening.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah,
it was more of like my
that's
first
the
adult
best kind.
relationship
Yeah.
where I'm like, what is like, why does this guy want me to have lunch with him at his office? This has never happened. Like, and that kind of like opened the door for me to like, okay, well, maybe it is valuable to learn how to, like, I guess, attain and manage and cultivate,
Mhm.
adult relationships, and make sure that they, are nurtured, because,
Yeah.
you're not too old to make friends, Ron. Like, the high school kids are still going to be there.
Yeah.
That's
Love them to
right.
Yep.
death, but you know,
Yeah. It's
No,
true.
that's right.
Well, and that encompasses a growth mindset, So, I mean, that's really being able to look at it and think about that growth side of it, because you could have said, you could have taken a different approach and wondered, like, why is this guy wanting me to go? What does he want from me? And you could have turned away from that, right? So you could have said, well, I'm not going to go have lunch with him, and really kind of walked away. But instead, you took a chance and you
it was
took
more
that
of a,
risk,
what else do I got going on?
Yeah.
The gym's dead.
Yeah.
Like,
No. Yeah. Yeah.
what else am I gonna do?
Yeah, no, I love it. Well, you walked through the door. I think, Scott, you opened it, but Ron, you had to walk through it, and I think that's a testament to the importance of taking advantage of those opportunities when
Yes.
they are there.
Yes.
Because how many times in our lives, Scott, did you, I know I did, I missed it, where a door opened and I did not recognize that the door had been opened and I didn't walk through it. And I look back and I think, gosh, I wonder what would have happened if I would have taken that opportunity and gone ahead and walked through it. Maybe my path looks different, right, if I did
Do you
that.
know what's
So, I mean,
funny?
no regrets or anything, but just observation.
But do you know what's funny about that, Linda? For me, there isn't a door I didn't try and open. I actually have no regrets.
Well,
And
why does that not surprise me?
but it's also why we're here today, right?
Yeah.
Like literally,
100%.
literally,
Yeah.
I have not won what could have, should have been. And that's part of what I wanted to talk about, right? You get
Yeah,
in
no,
front
that's
of
good.
it.
I like it.
It's not
Yeah.
yours to lose if you tried. It just was never meant to be
Yeah.
if it doesn't happen,
Yeah.
And
Yeah. No,
Ron didn't
that's
have
true.
to show up here for lunch. Ron didn't have to say yes to this podcast. All
Yeah.
those different things could happen. And I will also say, trust but verify is in there. Ron was at the gym. I saw him consistently. He wasn't some weirdo on the street.
Right.
His goals and self-care and habits were very similar to mine. And there was a consistency that allowed for a basis. So it's not
Yeah.
like I just
Yeah.
walked into Giant one day
Which
at the
was
grocery.
absent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so there was also a selection process inherent to me that it made sense to
Sure.
pay it
For
forward
sure.
to this
Yeah.
nice guy who was trying to pay it forward to me and his own skill set too. Just
Yeah.
in full disclosure, people shouldn't just run around knocking on everybody's random doors, but I've had
Yeah.
many people knocking on my door that I've had come to my office that I mentor that I can't have relationships with either, nor do I continue the
Yeah.
mentoring because they just don't quite get it for me.
Yep.
So it is a two-way
Yeah.
street. Yeah.
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 No, it has to be rewarding on both sides. I mean, to your point, it's like I don't think that we're implying in the conversation to I think what you were saying there, Scott, is that you go knocking on every door, you walk through every door, you
Right.
just talk to every random person out there. There's got to be a reason, right?
Right.
You see something, there's the stars align in a way that makes sense, and so but you got to recognize when that happens and then take advantage of it. And I think that's what often gets missed is the recognizing it and taking advantage of those opportunities.
Exactly.
Frequently kind of just gets that's where we miss. So
Exactly right. That's exactly right.
yeah.
So next,
No, I
let's
like it.
moving us along, Ron, and for the sake of time, coaching can
Sure.
sometimes feel a little bit like counseling. How do you find people to trust with your inquiry? And further, how do you incorporate coaching, mentoring, or advice from others into your life and career path? Surely I'm not the only one that you're appreciating.
Yeah. What was the first part of the question? I started to answer it in my head, the last part.
That's
first
okay.
part.
No, coaching can sometimes feel a bit like counseling. And I'm really
Yep.
particular around coaching being an inquiry tool set, right? So coaching, counseling, they can feel a little bit like advice giving. Here's the question. How do you find people to trust with your inquiries in general? And further, how do you incorporate mentors, coaches rather, and advice from others into your life and career? And then all I was saying is don't use me as the example, but who
Yeah.
else and how else do you get that
Yes. I've been
support?
wildly, when I think about it from the relationship standpoint and the coach and mentor and leader standpoint, I've more or less hit the absolute lottery. I had a manager when I started here as a sales development representative that she was not going to let me fail. She took pride in my success, which I kind of leveraged to get better. And I was not good when I started. I was horrible. And she was like, "Ah, but you got it in you," and
Yep.
she helped bring it out of me, and I'll be forever grateful for that. And then, later on in my career, I've worked with other leadership coaches here at Memory Blue, um, that have been instrumental in my ability to manage and lead people because that is not a skill that's not a natural skill someone has, especially on the management portion. Leadership, you have qualities, but for management, that's more of a skill set that you have to develop. So in terms of the coaching, on my part, the people I've trusted the most
Mm.
are the ones that didn't necessarily dismiss the questions I was asking. For example, uh, something that makes my skin crawl is hearing like the answer to my question be, I'm not so sure you're asking the right question. And I'm like,
Mm.
some people that works, it makes them think. For me, I'm very analytical and objective. So when I'm asking a question, I've thought about it. So unknowingly, when I hear that, it's like you are kind of dismissing everything that I like, all
Right.
my thought process going into this. So when I see someone being open to my questions, whatever they may be, and asking me more about how I got to that question or what are my thoughts on the question, because they know I've answered it in my head. And if they're willing to hear me out on my, kind of my general makeup of an answer,
Mm.
that for me is like the ultimate form of trust or the ultimate form of, hey, like I'm going to be a good coach or I'm going to be a good mentor. Um, because a mistake I see a lot of is instead of meeting the person where they are,
Mm.
a lot of mentors and coaches have this playbook that they will try to shove someone into. And it has to work, right?
Ah,
You have to ask these questions. But if you're not meeting someone where they
interesting.
are,
Yeah.
the first step, it doesn't like, there's no foundation, there's no base. And all the mentors that and leadership coaches I've worked with, they've always met me where I am. They've never dismissed my thoughts or emotions. They've never told me you shouldn't, like, this isn't that big of a deal. They met me where I am. So that comes in a lot of different forms, but I think that would be
It's a
the first thing to answer your question, Scott.
fantastic answer. I love it. I love that
Yeah,
answer. And you
that
have
was
hit the
really good.
jackpot if people aren't if yeah, you're lucky to I'm really happy for you in that regard too, because you've hit the jackpot with not having the negative experience. And there are
Yeah.
opportunities in this realm of leadership to get negative tell
Absolutely.
tell you what to do
Yeah.
experiences. That's awesome.
Well, and I like what you were saying too, that because I think that that's the turnoff sometimes why people move away from the coaching and the mentoring side is that that the you if it is approached in just this scripted, here's the box, and here's the questions, and here's how we approach it, versus let me get to know you and understand, and to your point, meet you where you're at.
Yep.
Now you're going to get so much more out of that on both sides because I'm not just assuming you're just like anybody else in your age demographic, wherever you are in your state of life, and determining, okay, well, here's now the path I'm going to take you on. I'm still going to let you take the path you're on, or the path you want to be on, and I'm going to hear what you have to say and help guide you along that, not try to put you in the box that's going to take you where I think you need to go, type of thing.
Yeah.
So that was
And
really great.
I think a lot of to add to that, I think a lot of like the leadership, any position of leadership, any position of management or coaching or mentoring, the first thing you have to tell yourself is this is a responsibility.
Hmm.
It is not it is not something that's inherently mine, and you have a responsibility to make sure that you are not forcing anything and that you are
Yeah.
guiding and you're not necessarily, I don't know what the word is, but I would say forcing people into a self-serving
Yeah.
aspect. And that's what drew me to Scott. And I will bring Scott up, sorry, again. Um, I knew like this guy just loves talking to me. I'll
I
take it.
do.
Mm,
I do.
And what's interesting about it is he met me where I was.
yeah.
He asked me the right questions. He was like, all right, read The Alchemist, think about what makes your heart sing. I don't even know what at the time, no idea what that meant. And then as that coaching formed, I would give him silently, I would give him more permission to steer my boat as the rapids got a little
Mm-hmm.
bit crazier.
Yeah.
So I think people skip that part where they get the buy-in from the
Yeah.
relationship forming, and they're saying, "Oh, you should just be doing this. What are you talking about?" Um,
Yeah.
and now we're at a point where I think, I mean, I'll see Scott in the gym and I'll say one or two things to him, and he can just take one look at me and he's like, "You're ready to evolve. You're shedding your skin. I know it. I've seen this 100 times. I've seen this episode before." Um, So there's definitely, yeah, I think there's a tier of systems and processes that you got to go through to be an effective leader, an effective coach,
Hmm.
and understanding that everyone goes through those differently and it looks different.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So being flexible.
Yeah, meeting
Yeah.
people where
No,
they
I
are
like
is
that.
huge, totally
Yep.
huge. And I love, if only people could have heard the Ron I met versus what you just said.
Mm.
I mean, crazy evolution, Ron. Kudos to you, man. I mean, you're defining coaching, mentoring, and advice giving to which you thought had no value or didn't even exist 5 years ago. I mean,
Yeah,
and
it's wild to think about.
it's wild to watch. I mean, it's wild to watch. Linda, crazy. And I forgot I asked you to read The Alchemist. My mentor asked me to read The Alchemist 20 years ago and do what makes your heart sing, right? And that was Pat DeLella, Linda. And
Oh, interesting.
Mhm.
crazy, crazy evolution. So thank you for allowing me a front row seat to all of this, Ron, because, and I hope it
Yeah.
continues. I really love watching where you're headed, what you're doing, and how you're applying what's right for you with the people around you. And happier still that you're able to dismiss the bullshit and decipher
Hmm.
what makes sense for you. And that's what I
Yeah,
think
Yeah.
you just spent a lot of time describing. And that's really important for everyone. There's not a
Hmm.
dollar sign on that. There's just not. It's a heart saying,
Yeah.
and the dollar signs come and the opportunity resurfaces,
Yeah.
right?
No, for sure.
absolutely.
Well, and there were some great messages in there for managers as well. I think, I think what you brought forward there too. And I think the hardest part when you're in a management leadership role is you have to learn how to check your ego. Because
Mhm.
that's usually what ends up happening to your point there, Ron, on wanting to like guide and direct and force in a specific direction. And that really is not the role of either a manager or a leader is to force or to push an agenda. They are there to guide and lead and mentor and help you grow in those positions. And I think that is a skill, to your point, that needs to be nurtured and grown and taught over time. And oftentimes people are in those roles because they were good at their job, not because they were good at managing people. They didn't have that relationship skill. And so, there's a good lesson in all of that as well with what you said. So.
Incredible.
Absolutely.
Linda, did you want to fire off the last three questions to kind of
Yeah,
wrap up our
yeah.
show and
So,
give Ron?
so Ron, we like to absolutely. We always like to end the show with three questions, and
Sure.
so the first one is, what's a common myth about your job or field of expertise? Like, what do
Mm.
people just think about that?
The common myth. I would say the first thing that flashed into my head was, um, I'll just talk about like sales in general.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the most common myth to me is that it, it- it's like I don't even know how to articulate this, but it's sleazy and it's all about persuasive and dark psychology and
Yeah,
all that. No, it's not. It's about solving problems. It's about listening
yeah,
to people. It's especially in my specific area of B2B or B2G, business to government. 99% of it is nodding your head and going, okay, tell me more. Okay.
yeah,
I, my goal has always been when I was a sales rep and individual contributor, my goal has always been to set up a meeting with a prospect without even saying the name of where I'm calling from,
yeah. Oh, I like
because
that.
all I
Yeah,
was doing was listening to their problems and at the end gaining enough trust to say, it makes sense. And
yeah.
I think to wrap it up, I'll say the myth is it's how well you can talk, it's how well you can listen.
Yeah, no, I like that. That's really good because, yeah, people do definitely have some preconceived notions about sales. So I like that. That was a good one for sure. I know I did. I've learned a lot over
Yeah,
the last 15 years working with salespeople. And you're right. It's totally different than what I
Totally
thought. So,
different.
yeah,
hmm
totally
The day
different.
of the used
Good
car
and bad.
salesman is over, maybe.
Oh, my
that's what I
goodness.
was
Yeah.
picturing: the slick back hair,
Yeah.
hitting the top.
Yeah.
This baby can do anything, and it's
That's
like,
right. If I got a deal for you.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
yeah,
Yeah.
no, I
Right.
totally
Right. Right.
agree.
Right. Right.
Yeah, no, it's very true. I like that. That was a good one. So what is the most important lesson you've learned over your career thus far?
mm, so many. Um, I would say the most important lesson has been, in a word, accountability. And
Oh,
what I mean by that is understanding what I can control and pointing all my firepower there instead
yeah.
of, all right, let me just go ahead and worry about all these things I can't control.
Yeah.
It's a waste of time. Doesn't get me any closer to my goal. And I think if you are focused on the outcomes of things you cannot control, there's what you're subconsciously doing, I believe, is exiting from the accountability portion. So it's a
Yeah.
safeguard built in. Like, well,
Yeah.
I'm worried about it. This is all I care about. It didn't go my way. Not my fault.
Yeah. I like
So I
that.
want to be able to say, nope, that was on me, good or bad, and have that accountability piece to it. So I constantly am clinging to things that are within my control, and
Yeah.
within that larger lesson has been a subset of many smaller lessons. But
Yeah.
I'll give you that one.
Well, to
I
that
like
end,
that. That's a great
well,
one.
and to that end, I think that those who pay attention to figuring out what they can control and, as you
Mm-hmm.
put it, putting their firing power on that will ultimately have the systemic reach to the positive side of what you can't
Yeah.
control. So
Yep.
Hmm.
you actually get both sides of that coin if you stay in your lane.
Yep.
If you
Yep.
jump out of
That's
your
true.
lane, then nothing gets done and it all becomes a mess. And so I just wanted to highlight that I agree with you on that. And it's a really good lesson for people to realize that staying accountable and in your lane will actually affect those things you think you want to control that you would never have control over anyway. Most likely
Yeah.
to
Absolutely.
your
Yeah.
benefit. Yeah.
Yeah. When I thought it was an interesting perspective that you brought into that, and that sometimes if you take that approach of worrying about all the things you can't control, it does erase the accountability
Mhm.
because you're side of that, and that's a very wise perspective on that. That I'm suspecting most people haven't thought of it through that lens, and so that was really good. Nice little nugget, I think, for
Yeah.
everyone
Very.
on that one for sure.
Ron's got
Yeah.
all the nuggets.
All the nuggets.
An old
All
Yeah,
the
no,
soul,
it's
I've been
nuggets.
called.
good.
Yes.
Yes, definitely an old soul. I totally agree. So my last
This is
question
a great
for
one.
you for today is what's one lesson your job has taught you that you think everyone should learn at some point in their life?
Mm. Active listening,
Hmm.
absolutely. I remember, and this is kind of goes back to the partnership relationship synergy. I remember when I was just starting to learn the skills of sales, even as a personal trainer.
Yeah.
Um, I started communicating differently in my personal life as well. What I mean by that is specifically, hey, what do you mean by that? Like, tell me more,
Mm.
help me understand, walk me through it, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the active listening piece, I would choose that above all else because it's applicable to outside the four walls of your office. It's it has reach everywhere, and if you apply it everywhere, you're going to be on the right track pretty soon, if you're not already. So I would say definitely active listening. Um, and to throw another one on there is just empathy too. I know it's
Yeah.
more of
Yeah.
a quality, but being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes, it's actually a very, very useful tool in solving a problem,
Yeah.
because you get to see it through a whole new scope. So I would say active listening and empathy, which to a lot of people might be like from someone in sales, like no way. But
Mm-mm.
again, the myth.
No. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. Definitely the myth. Yeah.
in my studies, and I won't be able to quote the study, I won't be able to tell you where I learned it, but there is a percentage, very high percentage of leaders interviewed that said their number one skill, their number one required skill for successful leadership is empathy combined with compassion. That's the
Yeah.
number one skill. So,
Yeah.
I've always sort of resonated that. I don't know where the study was. I don't know whatever, but so I buy into what you're saying because I totally
Mm-hmm.
believe that gets overlooked a lot in what people think
Yeah.
they're aspiring to be as leaders.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, agree. And active listening,
Mm,
such a critical
good one.
skill that is lacking in the world today. So,
No,
so yeah, being present and actually hearing what someone is saying and you're right, that is actually a critical skill in sales, because if you're going to be good at it, you have to actually hear what the customer is saying, not what you want the customer to say. So,
Right.
You see a
so
lot
I
of
think
people
that's
waiting
really
for their
good.
turn to talk. It's
Yeah,
like you're not getting
yes,
anywhere.
yeah. It's true. No, it's very, very true. So those are two very wise. So I'll buy into the old soul theory for sure. So yeah, Ron, it has been such a pleasure. I can definitely see why Scott wanted to get you on the show. I
Yeah.
think what you provided today was just so great, and what an amazing story. And just where you are right now, you still have so much life ahead of you, and so many more opportunities. I can't wait to see where your journey takes you
Yeah, you'll come
next.
back and
So
visit
Excited
us
thanks,
for
one
it.
day,
Scott.
Ron, please. Yes?
Absolutely.
I would
Absolutely,
love it.
absolutely. Another
Yeah,
5 years, who knows? I
that's right.
that's what I learned.
I can only hope.
You
Yeah.
never know. You don't.
You never know. That's right. You definitely don't.
Thank you
Well,
for being
Scott,
here.
thank you so
Yeah.
much. This has
Yeah.
been great.
Thank you
Yeah,
guys for
this is
having
a
me.
good one.
This was awesome. My first podcast. It was an honor. And I
Good
Yeah.
couldn't
job.
think of anyone else I wanted to do it with. So
Oh,
I
that's
appreciate
love
it.
it.
awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you so much. It's been a great one. So
Good.
yeah, thanks to everyone. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. An Unconventional Guide to Success is an inspirational, motivated series hosted by Scott Montgomery and Linda Misegadis, recorded on Riverside.fm. Music, editing, and production by Logan Misegadis. Check out Scott Montgomery's new book, How Did You Get Here, and all the helpful related materials at www.howdidyougethere.com. Thank you for joining us on our journey. If you would like to reach out to us, our contact information is in the show notes.